Hello, my name is Matthew, and in this video I'm going to show you demonstration of Versa Analytics platform. So first of all, this is the view of the Versa director, and in the Versa director we have the last tab that's called Analytics. So if we're going to click on it, we're going to be redirected to the web interface of the analytics. So actually, what we see in this menu is just being loaded from the analytics web server and being redirected here. Okay, so on the first page of the analytics, you can see top branches for the customer one, for example, in this case, top branches by the bandwidth. And you can also make the changes to see them based on the uh, maybe received and transmitted bandwidth, or maybe on just received, or maybe you want to see this in some different view, like for example in the column view, which of the sites are the top by the bandwidth currently, or maybe in the pie chart or any other. The same top circuits that are being used on all the branches. So we can see multiple circuits represented here on this pie. And the information that we are currently viewing is based on the last 30 days. From this menu, if we would want to go to any of these branches, for example, we see that one of them is loaded more than others, we can just click on that branch and it will lead us to that branch view and specific information that we can see specifically in that branch. We'll come later to this menu in much more details, but in the meantime, let's see what else we can see in the initial screen. So also in the initial screen, you will see the list of your devices. Devices such as, for example, here we have branch 4 and it doesn't communicate with anything. So availability is 0%, so it's constantly down. It's probably someone deployed it and then just forgot about it. Then we have 3 branches in this area. In this area, we have controller and we also have, one second. And we also have device such as DC branch 1, and it's constantly available. Also, if you would want to see what information is being transferred between branches, you can click on the actual line between them and it will show you the amount of traffic that was passed during the chosen period between, for example, site 1, branch 1. So one of them is on one side, another one on another side. And that's how you can see the traffic that is being passed between the devices specifically for our tenant. Next, if we'll click on this sites menu, you'll be able to see top sites by the bandwidth. And for example, right now we have the top sites is probably site 1, branch 1, and site 3. And actually, we can even unselect others to see only these top sites, or maybe only one of them. If you want to zoom in, you can always select the distance and see on with what time exactly the biggest throughput or the biggest load on the circuits was. And we can always reset the zoom to the previous position. So let's return other sites. In the meantime, once again, you can see this information based on the total bandwidth, uplink, downlink speed, where you can once again select and deselect some of the branches and some of the circuits. The same can be based on the volume. The same can be in the, for example, uh, stacked area, or maybe it can be in the area format or in other formats. So it's all very granular. Also in here, you can see which of the sites passed what amount of information within last day. So currently we're looking at within the last day. And actually, almost forgot to tell you, so we can see granularity of last 5 minutes, last 15 minutes, last 30 minutes, day, hour, maybe 12 hours, 7 days, 30 days, or maybe a custom range. It depends on your on what you want to see. So if we're gonna watch this over the last 30 days, we can see the top sites by the volume of the information that is being passed. And for example, site 1, branch 1 is the leader in this case. And once again, we can just click on it and it will lead us to the more detailed information specifically about this branch. But once again, more details later about this. If we want to see the availability of all of our branches, so within last 30 days, this was the availability of the branches. So at some point, branch 4, actually, as I said before, probably it was deployed and right away put down. So branch 2 was at some point unavailable. All others were available all the time. Now, the number of connections, top 50 sites by the connection. So we can see that the leading site is site 1, branch 1. We have site 2, branch 2 as number 2, and probably a lot of communication going to the controller. The last thing is the heat map. Heat map represents, first of all, it shows you the bigger the square, the more sessions was established from that site, and the color indicates availability. For example, availability of site 2 was 86% within the last month, therefore it shows slightly more yellow than others. So the size of the square means the number of the sessions that was established from that branch, and the color indicates the basically the health of that location. If you want to see more details about the satellite link and just see the map, you can always click on the site map and see what are the branches in which location. So for example, in here somewhere in Mexico City, we have a branch 3, a site 3 branch 1. And if we want to see what are the connections that these guys is having, most of the connections are going between this branch and controller, and the volume is actually pretty big. So I suppose most probably there was an update of the software images or some security stack. That's why it shows such a big amount of information that was passed within the last 30 days between controller and device. And also there was a communication between controller 1 that's located on the left and site 1 to this branch. So also some other amount of information. Now, information in more details about paths. So for example, if we want to see the path usage from, I don't know, let's say from this site 1, branch 1 perspective. So from the site 1 branch perspective, we can see that most of the communication was to branch 2, branch 3, from site 1 to branch 3 through another circuit, and so most of the communication was between these two, branch 1 and branch 3. And once again, we can do this based on the uplink, downlink information, or we can build different kind of charts, so whatever is more comfortable for us. And at any time, we can see just the statistics, maybe based on the number of sessions, or maybe based on the volume of information that was passed in total. So we can see that most of the information was passed between branch 1 to site 1, branch 1 to site 3, branch 3, using the local circuit BB1 and remote circuit BB1. And here it was 465 megabytes information passed. If we want to see more details specifically about this communication between these two guys, we can click on the more detailed link, and it will show you exactly at what time was the peak peak throughput between these two devices. Now, SLA metrics. Once again, SLA metrics can be measured. Let's say we want to see what was the SLA metric between site 1 and for all the circuits to the site, let's say site 3. And I want to see only the delay information. So that's the information about the delay that was between these two guys, and we have multiple measures. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 probes between these two guys. So Currently, if we'll see that, for example, probe expedited forwarding between branch 1 and branch 3 that was going between BB2 and BB1 circuits, that was the delay between those two guys. If we want to see information not on BB2 to BB1, but maybe BB1 to BB1, that was the delay on this SD1 tunnel that was built, and so on and so forth. So all the historical data is available. And probably, as you can see, so this probe of BB1 to BB2 forwarding class any, so best effort probes stopped at some point. But once again, it's all configurable. Also, you can see multiple rules of the communication between different sites. So currently, branch 1 doesn't have any rules to pass traffic to other sites, but if they were here, we would see information on this slide. And okay, so, oh, actually, here they are loaded. So we have two rules that were mostly hit. So if we had much more SD1 rules, how we should pass the traffic, for example, voice traffic we want to pass in one circuit and under one conditions, video traffic under other conditions, and so on. So that would show you the most hit rules by the bandwidth. And actually, we can switch this by the number of sessions, which rules were hit the most. Like for example, here it will show you that iPerf rule was hit the most over the side 1 to side 3 circuit. And in here, if we would want to see details of that communication and how much traffic was passed, we could also click on the plus sign. Now, let's see actually from the perspective of one of the branches. Let's see from the perspective of, let's say, I don't know, let's say branch 3. So what we can see in that branch. So first of all, we can see the communication, what was the total bandwidth passed by this site in the last 30 days. We can see information not only total bandwidth, but maybe a total uplink downlink bandwidth separately, or maybe a volume and a different chart. So whatever we want to make this chart, that way it's going to be shown in here. And actually here we can see that the current location is Mexico, Beno de los Baños. Okay, if we want to see the availability. So within last 30 days, this site was 100% available. So everything was good with it. At the same time, if we want to see the access circuits, so currently, and actually in the last 30 days, that site had two circuits, BB1 and BB2. Most probably it's broadband 1 and broadband 2, and the load of the BB1 was much bigger than BB2, mostly almost all the time. So also in here we can see that mostly for the internet access for the DIA, in most cases BB2 was used, while BB1, oh actually no, they both were used, they're almost overlapping. So probably we had a load balancing on that side to the internet and system, as the connection had um, the same metrics, it just load balanced them equally. So we can see the DIA traffic usage, which of the circuits was used mostly. If you will have some rules that will identify only one of the broadband circuits as the preferred one to go to the internet, this is where you would be able to see information specifically what is the circuit that is being used the most. Okay. Other information such as top users. So top users, actually behind this site, we had top talker, only one of them. So if you would have 100 or 1,000 of users, it would show you which of them were the most talkative, for example, by the bandwidth, or you can see this based on the sessions or any other information that you want, and the same historical data. And for example, if we want to see more details, what exactly this guy transmitted 1 gigabyte of information and downloaded 100 gigabytes of information. So we can see when exactly this guy was accessing something and what he was accessing. So maybe it was Twitter, or maybe it was National Geographic or something else, and specifically how much traffic each of that application took from the system. So we can arrange them in a different way as we want. Okay, but let's go back. So that was the information about the users. Now we can see on the branch 3, on the side 3, also information about the top applications. For example, top application by the bandwidth. The most used application was the Twitter. The second used application was, I think, Google Play or BBC. And specifically, if we would want to see who used it the most, here we would see the top talkers over that specific application and when exactly they were using and which of the circuits. So here's the login of the session and when it's exactly happened. And also, for example, if you want to see in more details any of the most user applications, you can select them in here. And if you want to zoom in to a specific date, you can just drag and drop or select some specific time frame and zoom into it to see which of the applications were the most used during that period of time. Next, let's see the top rules that were hit on this branch. Actually, on this branch, we almost didn't have any rules. Let's see any other. Let's say, okay, there are some rules configured on this site, on the branch, site 1, branch 1. And here was the SD1 rule that was configured and mostly was hit. And once again, this is a test environment. If you would have like hundreds of rules, they would be here and you would be able to see a different statistics. Next, Sla Metrics. So if you want to see the details specifically about the Sla metrics between site 1, branch 1 to the other sites, that's what it show you more details about it. So, and you can do this based on the delay variations or maybe based on the loss ratio or total loss. And here we have the SLA measurement, the latest reports that were reported by the sites. And once again, they are rotating constantly, so after some period you won't see the most old one. Okay, SLA violations. If there were any SLA violations, for example, by some rules. So here's the remote sites that has the most flaps of the SLA between them. So from the perspective of site 1, we had the most problems between site 1 and site 3. And there were probably some tests happening between them, and we were testing specifically how it was happening. And you can see the statistics on this screen. Okay, if you want to see the most recent events, for example, what happened. So, for example, recently there was a restored communication to the hub 2. So probably it was violated some point back and then it became restored. And it can show you specifically which rule was triggered and why this rule was violated. So what was the symptoms? Next, if you want to, and if you have multiple tenants or multiple VRFs, you can always see information per VRF. So currently on this tenant, it has only one VRF, and here's the statistics of this VRF usage, specifically how much traffic was passed through it. Next, if you want to see something like Application Performance Manager, let's see on which site we have it enabled. Okay, so for example, application performance management that we're tracking toward the Office 365 site over different circuits. So this was done specifically to measure performance of those applications to which of the circuits to choose to use to them. Like for example, broadband 1 or broadband 2, and it shows you the specific statistics like response time from that site and different statistics we can choose here. So that was the general information that's going to be configured most of the time on all the Versa appliances by default. Now let's go into more details about the security. So security information. Here we can see the top applications that are used in this specific tenant. So in the previous manual, we saw granularly, specifically, which of the sites had the most talkative applications. And here we're looking for this tenant, but all of its sites. or if we want to, we can see it based on one of the specific devices, but in this case, let's see for all of them. So for example, top applications that were used. Okay, others will not take, like Skype was very popular, and it's based on the number of sessions. Also, BBC was super popular. National Geographics were very popular. And we can see this in various formats. Top URL categories. Most URL categories were others, or it was also society, business, and others. If we want to click on any of them, we can see specifically what was the load and what was the request type. So for example, last time site 2 branch 1 from this source IP address requested information from this IP address, and it was specifically, here's the information about the session that was happening. Now, other information such as top SD-WAN rules, wildcard rules. Once again, it's probably the most used one. It's allow all, but if you had other rules, or if others would be more granularly configured, you would be able to see them here. Top destination IP addresses, where we exactly were using or downloading some traffic. Most probably some of them are news sites or some advertisement sites. Top source addresses. So this, for example, this 172.20 subnet was the most talkative. And on this screen right now, you can see the addresses of the destination of the source addresses in the aggregated format. So it shows you /16. We purposely did it on this specific analytics node. By default, it's going to be a /32 rules. So we just made it to aggregate all the traffic, so we won't take too much space on the hard drive, because this instance is used for the demo purposes. Okay, other top zones that were used, most of them were top firewall actions, top threats that were caught by the system. And if we want to see more details about the application usage, we can see information about them in more details, what exactly was used, when exactly it was used. The HTTP traffic was, like, for example, most of the sessions during which period of time. And we can do this not only by the number of sessions, but maybe by the bandwidth. Like top applications by the sessions and top application by the bandwidth. By the bandwidth, the most applications was top application, probably iPerf. But if it by the number of sessions, it's going to be the mix of everything. At the same time, you can also have the statistics based on the risk of the applications, which of the risk categories were the most used. So we have 5 predefined categories, like the least risky, like Bing, eBay, or Skype, and others. So category 3 might have, for example, information such as Facebook, LinkedIn, BBC, and so on and so forth. So there are 5 predefined categories which will make the statistics based on the risk evaluation. Also, if you would want to, you can always create rules to allow your customers to access only applications which has the lowest risk, or maybe the highest risk, might be like throttled to some level. The same can be done with the productivity, like the most productive, the least productive applications. Let's see in the category 4, we have the LinkedIn, like not very productive, but still, so that's why it's not category 5, it's in category 4. But at the same time, it's not a Facebook, that most probably going to be in the category 3 or category 2. Let's actually check it. Yeah, category on Facebook is going to be in the category 3. So, and you can enable or disable different rules on your SD-WAN system, specifically which of the categories should be enabled or disabled. And here you can see the statistics, how productive, for example, your employees, and what is the most popular in their case, in case of your organization. And you can see this per all organization or per specific site. Like, let's say we want to see this only for site 3. We can click on it, and we can see only the throughput or the sessions number that was generated from that site. And once again, the time frame for which you want to see this can be very granular, so you can do this, for example, for the last hour, or for the last 7 days, or for the last 30 days. And also, if you want to see applications definition based on the category, you can see that. For example, general internet traffic took you 107, almost 80 gigabytes of download over the last month, while media took 5 gigabytes. And if you want to see more granular, like for example, web traffic took this much, and mostly it was Google, Twitter, HTTP, some unrecognized traffic, something of the Salesforce, and so on. And granular statistics can be seen also in this page. So, and once again, all of these categories like risk, productivity, families, and subfamilies can be used for organization of the different rules. So not only you can see the statistics, but also after that you can define which of them you want to allow or deny, or maybe put into some low costly circuits, or maybe throttle to some specific throughput. Next menu. In the web applications menu or URL category statistics, you can see information what are the most popular or most bandwidth consuming URLs. And the most consuming were, interesting, it was social network and news and media, according to this graphic, at least within the last month. You can see that, for example, here's the most popular URLs that were used in the last month, and you can see specifically when this category was accessed the most. And if you want to see more granular information, like for example, which websites were accessed and what is the URL, that exact URL that customer requested, and you want to see this, you can enable this in the SD-WAN rules. The only thing that we would recommend to do this to choose wisely, because you can overwhelm your analytics system with the amount of information, and you may run out of space pretty soon, because we can literally monitor everything. So by default, we only enable category analytics information. But if you want more detailed information, you can always enable it separately. So for example, this is based on the URL categories information. If you want to see information, something like based on the URL reputation, there are like low risk, high risk, trustworthy or not trustworthy. So let's say, for example, we want to see the high risk applications where when most of them were accessed by the bandwidth within the last month. You can always see it in here. Now, let's go to the next statistics, firewall statistics. So in the firewall, we can see that the most used rule was the wildcard, so like allow everything. But also there was, let's delete others. There were some information, for example, some firewall rule that was called URL blacklist that was used at some period of time. Also, there was a rule for the Facebook, probably somebody decided to throttle it or to do something with it. So, and you can see details about each of them on this page. And you can do this not only by the bandwidth, but you can do this based on the, for example, number of sessions. So if we will delete the wildcard, the allow from trust and IP filtering blacklist was the most used rules that we had on our firewall. And exactly in here, if you want to see more details about the specific rule, for example, we had a rule URL blacklist. If we'll click on it, we can see when exactly it was hit the most. If we want to see information based on what are the most popular sources, it can be viewed in here. What are the top talkers in your organization? Like for example, we want to see about this guy, specifically when he was the most talkative, or this subnet. The most popular destinations. The most used zones like internet broadband zone, or maybe LAN customer zone or other zones. Specifically, what was the usage of each of them over a period of time. And don't forget that Analytics is support multi-tenancy. So whenever you watch something, up until this moment, everything that we're looking at was for the tenant customer one. If we would want, you can just go to other customer and let's see, I know, for example, the statistics of customer 11. So in this tenant, we had only two devices, controller 1, controller 2. Let's find some other tenant that had a little more devices within the last 30 days. Okay, so for example, customer 2 had a lot of devices as well. So, and we would be able to see only the data for these guys and for these sites if we would log in under the customer 2 user. Okay, let's get back to our security. So we just covered the firewall statistics. Now let's go to the threats. If you want to see threats or what was the most, let's say the most attack at resources or destinations in our network or on the outside, we can go to the threats menu. And here you can see information about the most top actions that were applied in our network, top IP filtering sources, or we can see information, for example, when and what was blacklisted. So, for example, on this device from the 172.19, 101.50, he tried to go to the destination, and the rule that he hit was the blacklist rule, and the action of the IPS was to reject it. Also here you will find the statistics on the malware, the top antivirus malwares that were caught by the system. For example, here was some kind of Trojan, and this Trojan, we can see who tried to catch it. So for example, the attacker was this IP address, the victim was this. So it was a exe file, and here's the file name that somebody tried to download. So we just rejected this download because our antivirus system recognized it as the virus. And statistics when exactly something happened and how it happened can be very granular for each tenant, for each site, so for each even kind of antivirus or malware protection system. So top infected applications. Most of the traffic that we caught was just using basic HTTP traffic, so it wasn't from LinkedIn or something else. Top victims. So most probably in here, somebody was just doing testing between these two machines. So victim was this one, attacker was this one, IP address. But anyway, in here you would be able to see the top talkers or top victims or top destinations, top attackers on your network. Next, vulnerability. Vulnerabilities such as IPS, IDS blocked attacks. So in here you can see the list of the threats. So if we want to see that it was the reconnaissance attack that was prevented at some point. And here was the source, here was the destination IP address, and the application was kind of Wikipedia, but there was something malicious on the way there. Therefore, we generated an alert. In this case, the action was alert. If the action would be rejected, it would be once again noted in here. You can see also top signatures that were caught by the system, or you can see the top source addresses that were actually identified as being exposed to some vulnerabilities on the network, or top destinations that exposed our system to some vulnerabilities and that we caught or prevented some actions from their side. So also can be viewed in here. If we had any, for example, attacks, okay, in this case we had only flood attacks, so DDoS system of Versa can prevent not only flood attacks but also port scans or different SYNFIN attacks. So for example, in these flood attacks, let's see that on the site once somebody attacked it exactly at this time then at some time it was again some kind of attack. We can see granular information on a very long, during a very long period of time. And of course, the summary of top threats, top applications with threats, so our top appliances with threats, so which were the most exposed. If we want to go in more details to find about any of them, we can just switch to specifically that device view. What exactly were the most malwares? This device didn't even try to catch them, but IPS was enabled, so it has some statistics on it. Next, information about the system statistics, about the memory load, about the CPU load over the period of time. So right now it was only enabled to collect it from the branch 3, but you can also always see that what was the CPU load, what is the average percentage of the memory load, what is the average load of the disk load, and here you can see more detailed statistics about the CPU memory disk load specifically of this branch. If we want to see information about the circuits, specifically of branch 3, what was the historical data or historical load of the circuits, it can be seen in here. It can be seen over any of the branches with the granularity. Okay, branch 2 didn't have any statistics. Let's say, oh, once again, we have this statistics collected only from the branch 3. And also, if we would have any guessed VNFs, the statistics about them would be shown in here. Currently, there are no VNFs being tested on this particular system, but if you would have any third-party VNFs like WAN optimizations, let's say Riverbed or something, the statistics about that system would be collected on this menu. Now, let's go into the logs section. In the logs section, you can see a lot of information, such as alarm logs. For example, alarm logs that were generated by the branch site 3, branch 1. You can see in the charts top alert severity, for example, how many was like actions or maybe cleared or top up appliances with alarms and so on. So if we want to see, for example, for all of the devices, here we can see that top appliances with alarms was site 2 was the top appliance, site 1 was the second one with top alarms. And here you can see much more information of what was happening exactly. Next, information about the DHCP. DHCP leads us at what time, what MAC address, what IP address he received, what was the profile, DHCP profile that we used to give that address, on which site it was located. And once again, by default, this information won't be logged, so you would need to enable it separately. But be very careful not to overwhelm your hard drive. So authentication currently is not configured on the system. So let's see, for example, firewall rules. So here was the firewall rule about the sports. So to categorize the sports system, and if you want to, we can see more details when exactly this device hit it. So for example, the source address was this one, destination this one, and try to retrieve some information. Here's what exactly happened, from which appliance, when it was the destination, which interfaces were used, what is the flow record, and more detailed information. Statistics about the DOS prevention, like for example, at some point we had some attack. If we want to see specifically what was happening, what was the internet address of the attacker, through which interface they tried to do specifically that attack, we can see this in the DOS information. Now, intrusion detection prevention are the IPS IDS. So here was some reconnaissance attack. on the June 15. If you want to see details about that attack, who was the destination address, what was the source address, so it all is going to be stored in here. And you can see this very granularly. And once again, you can see this for all sites within the last 7 days, 5, 30 days, and so on. Let's say we want to see something like antivirus statistics. So for example, the last action was reject on this antivirus detection type virus W32 explore zip file. So if you want to see the statistics specifically, what was happening, what was the accuracy, what was the protocol ID, what was the branch, source, destination port, when exactly it happened. So you can see all the historical data about this. And if you want to, you can always download the statistics in the PDF or CSV format. For example, if you want to see this in the PDF format, we can download it. And view the same information stored in here. Okay, if we have any URL filtering enabled, for example, here someone was doing test on the blocking of the news and media category. So the action was blocked, and we can see that, for example, in this action happened on the June 15th at 6:47 p.m. The URL was cnn.com. The action was blocked. Source address this one, destination this one. So in other categories, if we would want to see them, we would always be able to see them in there. So let's say we want to see something in the IP filtering menu. So for example, in IP filtering, we had a filtration and created some specific blacklists. Maybe it was based on the country, or maybe based on the reputation of that specific destination. So for example, the destination country was United States, but it was blacklisted, so we rejected that connection from the 172.21.150 to that destination. And if we want to see more information, what was the branch, what was the application, specifically what was happening in the country, the geolocation, and so on. This all is going to be stored in the more detailed menu. Next section about traffic monitoring. So here we just enabled separate monitoring of the traffic that is happening between that's happening on the branch 3, on the hub, site 3 branch 1. So in here we just decided to collect some statistics, and specifically this rule was collecting between zone LAN 1 zone and interface 2. So therefore it would be logging all the connections of this type. And we can see that, for example, there was a lot of access to the Skype application, to the Skype website, or there was a lot of connection to the Office 365, mostly from the same source. So you can see that within the last month, we got almost 4,000 pages of the logs generated that were hit by the system. You can imagine that in our case, we're using only 1 or 2 hosts behind each of the branches. Imagine what will happen if you will enable logging information for 1,000 users or 1,000 of the branches. It can overwhelm your system pretty soon. So be very careful what you're enabling to log and what you're not enabling to log. Also, you can see information about the web monitoring. Like for example, here we enabled monitoring to monitor the request to the Salesforce. Specifically, we can see when and who accessed that platform. What was the HTTP host? What was the URL? Who exactly accessed it? So which IP address, what was the destination IP address. Okay, next, statistics of the SD-WAN. So for example, statistics of the SD-WAN traffic that was going through the SD-WAN, probably in here we had a centralized hub location. So someone from the appliance site 3 tried to access some specific traffic on the SD-WAN, and therefore we log this information. If we want to see information about the SLA violations, so for example, here was the rule that was violated, or SLA metric that was violated, and when exactly it was violated, and which protocols it affected. So if we would enable SSL decryption, statistics about decryption would be shown on this page. Currently, we're not enabled on any site, but anyway, it would be shown on this menu. If you would want to see information, like for example, you can enable packet capturing during specific time frames. So let's say that you want to capture the packets that are going between specific source and destination during nighttime where you are not at work. You can schedule that capture, and then you can just download the PCAP file and view it somewhere in the Wireshark to review what was exactly happening during that period of time. And then you can download it from the analytics menu. So this is the base information that you can see on the Verse Analytics. Now, let's see which tools in addition we provide to our customers. The very cool feature that we have is the reporting feature. The reporting feature allows you to create reports. So let's say we want to generate report for the SD-WAN service for the top application usage, and we want to have this in the pie format, and the matrix is going to be bandwidth and sessions. So here are the top applications that were used on our SD-WAN network. If we want to do this, for example, only for a specific appliance, we can always do this only for appliance, let's say site 3. Okay, on site 3 there was nothing. Let's see from some other site. Oh wait, actually I just did it in the wrong type. So let's say the applications that were used specifically on the site 3 only. So here's the information about the site 3 statistics only. And you can generate these kind of reports in various formats. So for example, if you want to have charts like, I don't know, in the column chart, we can add it and it will show us top sessions, top bandwidth of different type of applications per that site. So currently, for example, on this report, we have 3 type of metrics. Let's add some other type of metric just to see what else we can do. For example, we can have a security logs, top applications, or top source addresses. Top source addresses by the sessions and bandwidth on all sites. So it was added, and here's the top source addresses that were in our system. This case by bandwidth and by the number of sessions. So the number of sessions in here and the bandwidth on the right. Or you can do this for the system monitoring. Let's say we want to see this for all the systems and create, okay, not the best option. Let's see, I want to see CPU load, memory load, disk load, and sessions load. Okay, let's make only one of them. Okay, the average load of the site 3 was 24%, and as I mentioned before, we had this site monitoring enabled only on site 3. So if we would want to enable it on all the devices, we would have all of them and with the comparison. But anyway, so far we've built some kind of report which has some graphics within the last 30 days. If we would want to, we can always save this report in the PDF format. So we want to save it and let's view it. So here's the report that was generated and the information that we just selected is generated in this report. So you can see it's Versa branded, but if you want to, you can always deploy the template that will download the reports in your company's format, in your company's logo will be somewhere like in here. So all this information is available in this report. Now, the next cool feature about reports, you can schedule these reports to generate them under some name. So first report test PDF template. So template, in which template it should be, like Versa template or maybe your company's template. And we can schedule them to do them hourly or daily or weekly. And then we can also set to send email with attachment of the PDFs that we just generating. And you can specify addresses like support versanetworks.com and then something else like Matthew at versanetworks.com. So the report with what we just saw, what we just generated, using the PDF template, this one will be generated every day at 10 a.m. and it will be sent to these two destinations. So currently I'm not going to be save it because we have a lot of other reports that are currently being generated. So let's see, let's say reports. So currently here's the information about the reporting and about schedules. So various reports that are generated by the system, when they are scheduled, completed reports, scheduled reports. We can stop this reports, maybe just to pause it for some time or maybe complete it, delete it, and then run once again. So this is the reporting capabilities of the Versa Analytics. And the last menu that we have is the administration menu. In the administration menu, the most interesting setting that you can see in the settings in the data configuration, there's going to be a retention period of how long we store different kind of logs. Like for example, daily data with a granularity up to a day will be stored for 90 days and then it will be truncated. Hourly data will be stored for 30 days. Like other information, SD-WAN QoS usage, bandwidth usage, when to rotate this information, it's going to be stored in here. Rotation period for the different kind of logs, antivirus logs, alarm logs, URL filtering, access logs, and others. So it can all be accessed from this menu. Search logs, like for example, if we want to limit the global data limit on the kilobytes per day, how much data we can store, or for each tenant, how much data each of the tenants can store. It also can be stored, configured in here. And here's where we set up what kind of information to store. So source IP addresses and destination IP addresses, we limit them to the /16 addresses. So we're just aggregating them. If we want to, we can always make it to store information in more granular format up to /32, but it will take much more space on the system. So this finalizes our demo of the Versa Analytics platform. I hope it was informative for you, and thank you for watching.